You thought you had the basics pretty much figured out. Think again. Science and technology are changing the way the world engages in its favorite pastime. Now, high-tech sex on Modern Marvels. High-tech sex? It sounds like a contradiction in terms. Isn't sex one thing that doesn't require any technology? It's a biological function, a drive for which people are pretty much fully equipped at birth. And yet, the human impulse to take a good thing and make it incredible has driven people since ancient times to contrive and devise potions, gadgets, devices, and toys for l'amour. Every technological advance, from ceramics to silent films to CD-ROMs and DVDs, has immediately been coupled with sex.
It never ceases to amaze me the speed with which humans deploy their technology for sexual purposes. There's got to be some unit of measurement. It's like speed of light, speed of sound, time it takes to get technology to a sexual expression.
Sex has never been totally natural. People have always been trying to insert some kind of mechanical device in it. They've been trying to toy with it. They've been trying to make it better.
I mean, with this huge brain, we have created a high-tech world out of a very primitive, basic drive.
That drive is on the verge of morphing into some mind-boggling new forms, like holographic sex, in which a programmable 3D image floats to life before your eyes. Or virtual sex, not just emails and chat rooms, but sophisticated computer add-ons that make it possible to literally turn someone on across the internet. As scientists isolate the chemistry of sex, the specific proteins that control desire and function, we really do stand on the edge of a new reality.
Within a couple decades, when you look onto the internet or look into the personals of a newspaper, a person might say, my name is Betty, I have high levels of MAO, low levels of serotonin, high testosterone, high dopamine, and if you are a biological match, call me.
The call for psychosexual drugs stretches far into the past. Aphrodisiacs have captured the imagination and the investigative energies of nearly every culture since ancient times. The range of reputed aphrodisiacs is fascinating. Everything from onions to ginger, mandrake root to rhinoceros horn, swan genitals to Spanish fly. Most aphrodisiacs draw their mystique from one of four somewhat demystifying reasons. They look like sex organs, they're spicy and hot, they're extremely rare, or they are the sex organs of animals, especially animals known for their sexual energy. Which is not to say that aphrodisiacs don't sometimes have at least a partial basis in scientific truth. Like oysters.
They're so rich in iodine and zinc from the sea that they restore the body and bring vitality. And also, they're very similar to certain body parts.
Spanish fly, of course, is the bad boy of aphrodisiacs. Made from the crushed skin of a blister beetle prevalent in southern Europe, Spanish fly has been used as a sexual stimulant for at least 2,000 years. According to the Food and Drug Administration, Spanish fly has no special powers of arousal, but is dangerous and potentially lethal.
It irritates the urinary system so that any kind of rubbing or itching definitely satisfies or tries to satisfy the itch. But the problem is it causes urinary damage.
Ginseng, one of the most revered and mysterious plants on Earth, has long been hailed as a sexual tonic. In tests relating to sexuality, ginseng has been shown to increase sperm production and mobility. It has also quickened the development of sexual organs in mice. The plant is highly valued by those who believe in its tonic powers, Most ginseng sells for between $100 and $500 a pound. This 40-year-old root is priced at $16,000. But that's nothing. In 2001, the owner of this herb store in Los Angeles sold a single ginseng root for $180,000.
Most of the most expensive roots come originally from the Qingbai Mountains in China. And the root that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, number one is it's based on how it looks, like a man. It's really thin, it's got the full growth root, it's got the long legs. Also another thing is, how old is it?
The older a root, the more active ingredients or ginsenosides it has. Ginseng isn't the only prized aphrodisiac in Chinese medicine. Far from it.
What we have here is deer antler. People say these are aphrodisiacs just because they increase the red blood cells in the system and testosterone levels. Other Chinese herbs that we use to tonify the yang for sexual performance is a gecko, which is basically a lizard from China. Very good for the kidneys. We also have an assortment of seahorses. Good for impotence and good for tonifying the yang.
Western medicine may not know much about tonifying the yang, but it has come up with a stunningly effective potency pill of its own. Viagra, introduced in March 1998, currently generates over $1.5 billion a year in sales. An estimated 52% of all men between 40 and 70 years old have experienced some kind of erectile dysfunction, a condition which for millennia has been suffered in helpless silence. Before Viagra, an erection injection was the main remedy for ED.
These are injections directly into the penis of substances which make the vessels of the penis grow larger and the penis erect. And not surprisingly, men were not desperately keen to inject needles into their penis.
Sildenafil, the active ingredient in Viagra, was developed by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals in 1989 as a heart drug for people with angina. It didn't perform well in tests, but male volunteers did report a curious side effect.
They were getting erections very easily. For example, just a pretty nurse passing was sufficient to give them an erection.
Pfizer quickly shifted the focus of its tests. Using a device called Origiscan, it measured the erections of thousands of men under the influence of the new drug. 80% reported improved erections. Pfizer was ecstatic. So were the volunteers.
We are required by the regulations to account for every last tablet. Towards the end of the study, we found that patients were reluctant to give their tablets back. So they tended to be more active towards the end of a study than they were at the start of the study. And this is probably because they knew that the tablets were running out and they'd have to give them back.
Sildenafil works by increasing blood flow to the penis. It does this by boosting the impact of nitric oxide, a substance which is released by nerves in the penis following sexual stimulation, and which causes its vessels to dilate, making an erection possible. One of the volunteers in the Viagra tests happened to be Senator and 1996 presidential candidate Bob Dole.
You know, it's a little embarrassing to talk about ED, but it's so important to millions of men and their partners that I decided to talk about it publicly.
People identified with him straight away, and if it was okay for Bob Dole to talk about erectile dysfunction, then it was okay for anybody else to talk about erectile dysfunction.
Thinking about trying Viagra?
We wanted somebody also to open the door for the younger man.
So get in the driver's seat.
Get to your doctor for a checkup and find out if a free sample of Viagra is right for you.
And what Mark Martin does is he puts sexual dysfunction in context of overall health with the Tune Up for Life campaign.
Despite its phenomenal success, Pfizer estimates that only 20% of those who could benefit from Viagra are taking the drug. Which is one reason why pharmaceutical firms are feverishly working on alternatives, like this gel form of sildenafil, which works directly on the penis, and this fast-acting inhalant, which sends irreversible messages of arousal to the brain and triggers an erection within 15 minutes. Incredibly, new treatments for ED are in the offing, that will eventually make Viagra and its spin-offs seem passé. Gene therapy will probably be available within 10 years. When doctors isolate the specific genes that control erection, they'll be able to introduce those genes through a benign virus and rebuild a man's erectile system from the inside out.
Gene therapy means the application of segments of genes, or which are segments of chromosomes, into a diseased organ to replace the abnormal genes and correct the abnormality and return that organ to normal function.
An even more staggering high-tech treatment for ED is tissue engineering. Men or women with genitals that don't work and don't respond to any other treatment will literally be able to grow a new penis or vagina.
It's no longer science fiction. We are able to take small pieces of tissue, grow them out in the laboratory, and create organs.
Dr. Anthony Atala of Harvard Medical School has helped pioneer the process. Over the last 10 years, he has successfully grown new penises and vaginas for small animals, as well as bladders, windpipes, and other organs. Though it sounds a little like something out of Frankenstein, the process of tissue engineering is disarmingly straightforward and low-key. Atala and his team biopsy a small piece of healthy tissue from the damaged organ, then grow the tissue in this red culture, or soup. When the cells have multiplied, they are basted onto and injected into a scaffold, or mold, which is made out of biodegradable materials and carefully shaped into the form of the desired organ, in this case, a small vagina. The seeding process, as it is called, goes on for 7 days.
These scaffolds degrade as the tissue is forming, and by the time that the scaffold is fully degraded, the tissue is now fully formed.
This radical treatment won't replace Viagra, but it will be a godsend for those born with non-functioning organs, or organs that have been damaged through violence, or even for men with severe cases of ED, where the penile tissue is thoroughly scarred.
Someday, patients who have sexual dysfunction will be able to go to their doctors and say, you know, we've tried everything and the problem is on the organ itself, and hopefully we will be able to put a new tissue or organ back into that patient so that they are able to have fulfilling lives.
Dr. Atala expects tissue engineering for sexual organs to be available by 2010. Reviving men sexually is one thing, helping them enjoy sex responsibly is another. Up next, the condom revolution and the male pill. In 1998, the year that Viagra was first available, the Pentagon spent $50 million on the drug for troops and veterans. High-tech sex will return on Modern Marvels. While women have over a dozen options, when it comes to contraception for men, the condom is still king. The condom. Could anything be more homely and low-tech? And yet, for all its simplicity, the condom has morphed into countless variations and evolved dramatically in recent years.
We've seen new shapes, new materials, emphasis on pleasure, not just protection. We've seen polyurethanes, latex thinner than we could ever imagine. We've eliminated nasty smells and added strawberry aromas. We've come a long way in the condom industry.
The technology behind condom production has also come a long way. 700 million condoms are produced in the U.S. each year, mostly by dipping glass molds into latex. The dry condoms are rolled off the molds, washed, dried again, and then put through a series of stress tests to make sure they meet FDA standards.
The stakes here are not small. This is a $1 device that's made for pennies that we are depending on to save our lives and prevent unwanted pregnancies.
The AIDS crisis of the 1980s brought a sense of both urgency and creativity to condoms, which today come in many sizes and flavors. Some condoms are as thin as cellophane and virtually invisible. Some are lubricated with a desensitizing agent to help men who suffer from premature ejaculation. But the big commercial breakthrough in state-of-the-art condoms has to do with pleasure.
These are our pleasure-producing condoms. This is the Pleasure Plus and this is the Inspiral. And you can see these crazy pouches and spirals are located exactly where most of the nerve endings are located.
Anatomically designed